Hey friend, welcome back to another episode of the Who Became podcast. I am so glad that you are here, but if you are joining us for the first time, a big welcome. My name is Simon Osmo, and each week I'll release a video from my podcast, the Who Became podcast, where I talk to people about transformations, life pivots, and self-discoveries. And my guest today is from the UK. He is a 4 times world record holder called David Haze. Now, here is the interesting thing. I was a detective in the UK for a long time and incarcerated many people, and that is part of David's journey. He spent over 3 years incarcerated for committing burglaries. But just in my mind, I could not put the two together, and maybe you'll be the same. When I heard him talk, when I heard him share his journey, I just could not see how he ended up in the criminal justice system. But he is doing amazing things now. Like I say, he's a 4-time world record holder, paddleboarder, and he really goes out of his way to help those people in the criminal justice system find the freedom and find their own mindset like he has done. So without further ado, I do not want to spoil it for you. Let's just dive straight into this week's conversation as I talk to David Haze. Well, David, welcome to the Who Became podcast.
Thanks for having me, Simon. I really appreciate your time.
Well, I'm really excited to talk to you because, one, you are a fellow Brit, and most of my audience is in the US, so it's always nice when I hear another British accent and I can start relating to being back home. So I should start off by saying, what is the weather like back home? That's what I normally ask people when I talk to a fellow Brit.
You'd be surprised to hear it's actually cloudy as always.
Oh, cloudy, yeah, and rain as well. You've got your raincoat somewhere over there. But well, David, thanks for joining us. It's going to be a really interesting conversation because you've done some amazing things. And my audience will know that I released the video of our conversation today. So if they want to head over to YouTube, they can see the video conversation. And behind you, I'll describe it for my audience that are listening. There are 2 frames behind you. There's like a small circle in there, and understand they are world records. Is that correct?
Yes, they're actually 2 of the 4 I have. I've got another 2 on a different wall, but I thought, it's always good to show them off, really, isn't it? Yeah,
you didn't want to appear too sort of boastful by having all 4 of them in things. So let's start off a bit about you then. So tell us what you do now, and then maybe tie that into your 4 world records that you have.
Yes, at the moment I work as a consultant for the criminal justice system. So I work for a company who are trying to make life better for people inside prison before they go to prison, to do a lot of youth work, and also when people are released. Something that I think is really important is trying to highlight how good reform and rehabilitation is, because I think in our system over here, which I know you'll probably know from your own experience, is non-existent. So we need to do more. And a couple of things I've been working on at the moment is actually doing a report for the inspectors of probation around mental health. So I've been talking to people that have had experience with the criminal justice system and seeing it through an eye of mental health and putting a report together. It's quite interesting to see what comes back from that, really, and actually hearing these stories of these individuals as well, which has been quite enlightening. And then from there, I'm also do a lot of adventuring as well. So I like to get outdoors on my paddleboard, attempt some world firsts, world records. But I do it as well to highlight the importance of reform and rehabilitation. And I work with a company called the Alliance of Sport, who are an ambassador for, who actually use the power of sport in the system to help tackle reform and rehabilitation.
Wow. And so tell us about the world records then. So what are they for? Let's brag for a little minute. So you've got 4, which is 4 more than me. Let's brag. Talk us through them.
Yeah, so in June, I came up with this idea ages ago to paddle the longest lakes in the UK, which is Loch Orr in Scotland, Lake Windermere in England, Loch Ness in Northern Ireland, and then Bala Lake in North Wales and Snowdonia. But I've decided I wanted to do them in 4 consecutive days and try and do them for the fastest time I could possibly do them in. The first one was 40 kilometres. Second one was 80 kilometres, then 38 kilometres, and then I finished on 11 kilometres for my 4th world record. Hugely proud of it. And next week, I'm going to go and take on the River Thames, England's most famous river. I'm going to try and do that in the fastest time possible without sleep. So the plan is to do it in about 40 hours without sleeping.
Well, and so these world records, Vince, it sounds like you've got them in the last sort of 12, 18 months. Is that what happened?
Yeah, I mean, originally I wanted to do the Four Lakes summer 2020, but I mean, I don't know what it's like for you guys in the US, but over in the UK, you know, we've had 3 lockdowns, and every time I'm getting ready to go and take on these challenges, a lockdown comes in and just keep getting knocked back. And luckily, June was the window. The weather was lovely. Well, that's it. Let's get out there. Let's go and do this. Head down, crack on.
And so I know we joked a little bit about you've got 4 world records, but is the goal to keep pursuing these records, which behind the records is really the mindset of you want to achieve and you want to grow? I mean, what is your plan with this, David? Where do you want it to go?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a keen waterman. I've always loved the sea. I've loved, the beach, everything. And paddleboarding for me is my escape, my healthy vice in life. And the paddleboarding industry hasn't even hit the peak of where it could go yet. So I'm trying to get out there, push that, attempt these world firsts, attempt these world records. And I can continue to do world records, but the world records is just something to give me a platform. So then I can go and talk to people about, the true meaning behind why I'm doing this. For me, adventure has completely changed my life. It's transformed me. I use it as a tool to grow and change as an individual. And I want more people to sort of take that little step out of their comfort zone, to have their own adventure and sort of reconnect themselves. So I think so many people, especially with these lockdowns, so many people have lost touch with themselves. And you just need to just send yourself and learn who you are once again.
Yeah, and it's funny we're talking about paddleboarding because there was a time here in Minnesota where I live, it's known for 10,000 lakes. And I went on a paddleboard and it wasn't a very good experience for me. I think I fell off more than what I went on. I don't know. I mean, I'm not a person of balance quite clearly, but but the challenges that you're doing aren't easy. I mean, why paddleboarding in specific? How did paddleboarding come into your love for adventure and challenge then?
Yeah, I mean, I've been surfing since I was, a young kid, really. I probably started when I was about 15 years old. Did really well for the surfing, but I mean, where I live in Bournemouth, in the south coast of England, and the water isn't always that great for surfing. So those days that I couldn't surf, I ended up taking to a paddleboarding. And through that, I just loved the extra sense of freedom it brought me, that little extra escape. I could just travel anywhere in the water, go and explore. And then from there, you sort of realize, actually, I enjoy this exploration, this adventure. Let's push it a little bit further, and it just keeps going like that. And that's every time I'm doing that, I'm just learning a bit more about who I am and what I'm capable of. And then I can take that off the water and put that into real life as well, which is great.
Wow. So if I interviewed you in a couple of years, there's most probably going to be 10, 15 of those world records behind there. So, you're inspiring me to think about what can I be a world record holder in? So, maybe how much tea I drink in a day. I don't know. I have to come up with something. But so, I mean, here's an interesting thing about you, David. And I said this to you because I always do a pre-interview with the people that I talk to on the podcast. And I think I said this to you and also said this to a few friends about you afterwards as well, is that when I hear you speak, or when I know what you do now about working in criminal justice, you'd never say that you're a person, I'll use the American term, you'd never say that you're a person that's been incarcerated twice for multiple years for committing crimes. I mean, it's just, when you have, and my listeners know I was a detective for 14 years, and my role was to put people in prison, but you have these preconceived ideas and stereotypes as to what a criminal looks like. And obviously, you're reformed, rehabilitated, you're doing great in society. But when I hear you or when I see you, I was like, I can't believe this guy's story. It just doesn't seem to ring true. There's a story behind it. So do you mind telling us about your time in incarceration and how that happened?
Yeah, I mean, start there quickly. You're saying you don't think you're surprised I've been to prison. I mean, that's part of the reason I do what I do. I mean, a lot of people, even when I was serving time inside, people would come up to me and they were shocked that I was a prisoner. I've been accused as undercover police. I was a journalist or a staff member. So that's part of the reason I do what I do as well, to try and change perspectives on people like myself so we can create these safer communities, these harmonious environments. But I mean, it all started when I moved to London. I ended up being a Forex trader in London. And I was doing quite well for myself, earning a lot of money, living the high life in London, spending a lot of money. And then one day I lost my job. My boss and we fell out. I ended up losing my job. And through that, I've been to boarding school at a young age where everything's sort of just given to you. If you want to do something, then they will encourage you to do it. And when I lost my job, I think that's the first major failure I've ever had to deal with in my life. And at this point, I think I must have been 26, never really dealt with failure. So I didn't really know how to handle this. I ended up turning to gambling to try and hide the fact that I was still earning money, ended up using a lot of drugs, ended up drinking a lot. And then one day I was offered a quick fix, I suppose you'd call it, an opportunity to make some quick money, which was to move some stolen goods. And then from doing that, I ended up getting arrested. And then for about a year before my court date was coming up, I was told I was going to go to jail. Again, I still hadn't told anybody, and this was just building up in me. It was like a pressure cooker. So that day I had to go to court, I just vanished, disappeared off the face of the earth. So I had this nervous breakdown, I suppose. And in those 5 weeks that I disappeared, I ended up turning to burglary. And then from that, I ended up getting arrested and then serving a 3-year prison sentence, which I did 1 year, 2 months inside and 4 years on tag.
Wow. And so, incredible journey that you went on. And one thing that I picked up on very early that you said there was around, I think you were 26 when this chapter of your life happened. And you said that you'd never really dealt with failure before or had failure. And it's interesting because I think one of the big sort of, I think I said this to you offline about sort of Simon Sinek. I think he's South African, British, and now lives in America. I'm not too sure what his background is, but big sort of motivational corporate speaker. He talks about sort of the millennial story that, we train millennials to not really, we have the problem as the older generation, not them, because we're not sort of teaching them well enough. And the reason why I say that is it is something that we have in life, don't we? But we're often trained for success, but it's in the most adversity that the true transformation happens. That's when the most self-discovery happens. And there's mostly not enough learning or life lessons or teaching around how to pick yourself back up. So I guess, was there an element of shame in it for you, maybe, David, that you'd lost your position and you didn't know how to tell people? What would you say to that?
Yeah, 100%. There was a lot of shame, it's embarrassment and everything. But something that I now know, failure is just an opportunity to learn. I've gone through this massive journey, and I've always read a lot of self-help books. And as you were saying, failure is a great tool to learn. Just because you failed doesn't make you a failure. You're a person who has just failed at that time. So it's just, learning from those mistakes and moving on. But for me, there was that element of shame. I've done so well up to that point in my life. Sort of during school, I had good grades, got university graduate, captain in sports teams, all of that. And then I had to deal with this. And in my head, my family, my friends got this image of me, and I was trying to live up to this image. And when that day came that, I failed, I just didn't know how to handle it and went completely wrong, different direction, buried my head and just, disappeared.
Yeah, and I want to move on to a little bit about I'd love to get your insight about validation and stuff. We'll capture that in a minute. So in case I forget, take a mental note. Someone wants to come back to validation. But, in relation to, because you served over around 3 years, was that right?
Yeah, so then I did so a year and 2 months, then I did 2 years, 8 months.
And so, and so the work you do now in criminal justice, like I said, I'm sure those people listening might say, hey, he sounds very articulate. You wouldn't put these two stories together. But when you meet people for the first time and perhaps they say, I work in criminal justice, and they say, okay, what do you do? And then sometimes it might come to the, well, why do you do what you do? Or what's the interest? Do you feel, because how many years has passed now, David?
A year and a half's passed now.
So do you feel shame? Do you feel, what do you feel when someone might say to you, why do you work in criminal justice? And you've got to go through this story about, how your life changed and you ended up in prison.
Yeah, when I came out of prison the first time, what I found was I tried to hide away from the truth, try to hide away from the fact that I've been to prison. And prison, at the end of the day, is a big part of my life. It's something major that's happened in my life. So when I've come out this time, I'm sort of embracing that part of my life. And going back to the failures, I mean, why can't my biggest failure in life become my biggest success? But as you said, every time I do meet people, I raise money for this charity. I work in the industry, criminal justice system. So people always do ask why. And I'm not ashamed anymore to, say why. Over here, it has to change. I've experienced it firsthand. I've witnessed the stress, the troubles, the violence, the drugs, everything involved. So I want to do something to try and highlight this importance. So a lot of the stuff I do outside of my work, like, the paddling, that's all to raise awareness around it, show others as well that, your past, your mistakes, your errors don't define who you are, and try and change perspective as well on people so we can support those that are coming out of prison. We can get them into work, we can get them housed, we can get them away from life of crime. I mean, the reoffending rate in this country is about 60, 70%. And that's appalling, really. We need to bring that down. But you see some of the people that come out of prison. In here, we get £47 when you leave jail. And if you haven't got a drink problem and no drugs and you haven't got a family, £47, you just go straight onto the streets, that's it. But if you did have a drugs problem, you've got nowhere to live, that £47, you're going to go and get yourself some drugs. And things like that need to change. And that's what, I'm trying to do. I'm trying to help. I'm trying to do my part anyway to try and make it better.
Yeah, and I know my audience have heard me say this before, even with the time I spent, incarcerating people, that incarceration isn't always the answer without education, because if you put them into a system where they're meeting their peers, the hierarchy, they come out as more educated and more sophisticated criminals. You're not teaching them the social skills that people need. So, I mean, I guess for you, one of the questions that people often ask is, well, you've done 2 terms in prison. Why are you so sure now there's not a third term?
Yeah, no, that's a fair question. Even my family, my friends ask the same. I mean, for me, that first time when I was in prison, I was so focused on coming back out, living life again, getting my job, getting money, hit the road running. And I didn't really take time to focus on me, connect with myself and learn about who I was. So I came back out, I ended up getting a job. Job was going well, ended up starting my own business. Business was going really well, ended up in a relationship, and then that got very toxic. Again, still not addressing sort of mental health issues and all of this. I ended up spending all the company's money and things just snowballed from there. Just ended up going to this massive black hole. I debt collectors knocking at my door, wanting money for this, wanting money for that. The drug use came back out, and I was thinking, how do I get out of this? I thought, you do one burglary and hopefully I can get away with it. And obviously that didn't happen. So then when I went to prison, just sitting there, scratching my head, like, how am I here again? I don't understand how I'm here again. I'm not going to get many more opportunities. So I took that moment to learn who I am, to understand my needs, my wants, my red flags, my green flags, learn all of that about myself. I also utilized all the support around me, and it's just been open and honest, something I never really did before. But whilst I was in there, I met a woman called Dr. Sarah Lewis, who completely changed my life. She saw me as a human being inside this dark place. She understood who I was and my needs. And funny enough, she's my boss now. I'm out of prison and I work for her. But when I met her, it was just complete change. And I'm still on this journey of self-discovery now. I mean, every day, every thing I take, every venture I take, I use it as an opportunity to grow and change and learn who I am. But I never letting go of the support that I have around me. And if I need help, I know now how to ask for help. And if I do fail, I know that failure is not a bad thing. These are things I just didn't understand before, and now I do understand.
Yeah, and you're perfect for this podcast because you said who I became in there like 3 or 4 times. I need to get a little bell, David, every time someone says it. But it is true because that self-discovery, even for me, the self-discovery about who you are. We've all, there's a guy that I interviewed here over in the US, Lewis Conway Jr. I should connect you to him, actually. He does a lot of advocacy work over here in the US. Great guy. But I asked him a similar question. He said, you can't be judged on the worst day of your life for the rest of your life, and he was actually involved in a murder. And it's true. I mean, we've all done things wrong. If we were judged on that worst thing daily, we wouldn't have any friends or we'd never be employed, So it is. So it's interesting. But listening to your employer, the person who put faith in you now, I sort of touched on validation there because I think, particularly as men, there's something that we often seek out, and it can be healthy validation, unhealthy. It sounds like she placed faith in you when perhaps you might not have seen it in yourself or not recognized some skills and attributes that you had. I mean, how do you tie that into part of your journey? Because what you haven't touched on so far is that your dad actually died in the Falklands War, correct? When you were very young. So, I mean, did you have any sort of self-discoveries around sort of how your father passing at a young age and spending time in boarding school might have sort of tied into some of this?
Yeah, I mean, well, my father actually died 3 months before I was born. So I've never.
Oh, was it? Okay, yeah. Sorry to hear that. Yeah.
So I've never known him. I've never really known that side of the family. And really, when I sort of look at it, there's always been that hole in me. And I went to, as you said, that I went to boarding school from a young age. I never really had that whole family life. But one thing I did have in life, funny enough, was adventure. I remember it was a military school. And on the weekends, we used to disappear into the woods, dressed up in our camo gear. The school bell would ring. We wouldn't come in because we wanted to hide from the teachers. We thought it'd be fun. And when I was sitting in prison the last time, I was just thinking, I used to love adventure. It sort of gave me this drive, this purpose in life. And I just let go of it. When I moved to London, when I let go of this adventure side of me, and I should have never done that. I mean, I've sort of now have this adventure mindset that I can put into my daily life. And as you were saying there, like Sarah saw a light in me. She saw something in me that I didn't see. I mean, when I was serving my time inside prison, I was trying to make it easier for residents inside, just make life a little bit better for people. And she sort of picked that up and it sort of grew from there, really. And she said, once you're out, I would love you to come and work for my company. And, we've got some fantastic things we're doing, and taking your mind and what you do would be a great fit for our company. And here I am today.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about your dad then, just we've got that. So I know there's sort of half the side of the family that you sort of don't know too much about or have any sort of contact with. I mean, when you're in prison, you've got a lot of time to sort of reflect and stuff. I mean, having the absent father, how did that affect you?
At the time, you don't think it really affected you, but having that time to sit down and focus on that, it's like, actually, yeah, it has affected me. I didn't have that father, and my mum's had relationships. There's been people in and out of my life all the time. So nothing's ever been stable in my life. I've never really had something concrete, and it's not until now that I've sort of realised this. I've just moved back to Bournemouth, where I live, and I've sort of said to my family, my girlfriends, like, I'm now staying put. I need something stable in my life. I need a home. And I think, sort of before prison, I was always moving about everywhere. And I think it's just realizing, I don't know what it is. I suppose it is trying to find validation from different places. Something that I never had. I've never had a dad to pat me on the back and go, well done, son. You've done good. I'm proud of you. But I think, even though I'm not going to get that, I think I just need stability in my life. And, that's what I've got now.
Yeah, it's interesting to say that you moved around, quite a bit before, looking for that sort of stability, because sometimes there's chaos in our lives, and I think we all sometimes cause our own chaos, and then sometimes there's chaos around us. But I think, having that stability and consistency is key. Just before I move, I want to talk about, I know you've got a lot of entrepreneurial spirit inside you. I want to sort of talk about sort of pivots and stuff, but was there anyone in your life at the time that might have stopped you going on this sort of wrong track? Have you ever sort of thought about that? It was just a question that came to me, thinking, was there anyone there that would have said, hey, David, this isn't the right path for you? Or were the validation you were getting, was it from like-minded people thinking, yeah, actually you should be, you are doing the right things and stuff? What did that look like?
I mean, when you say the wrong thing, like going down
the wrong path, yeah. Was there no one that placed their arm on you and said, David, stop, you're going to end up in prison, or you're thinking of doing a runner? That's a crazy idea.
Yeah, I never told anybody, but if I did tell my family, yeah, they're 100%. I remember going to court, my grandma was just saying to me, like, all you had to do was ask for help and we would have helped you. Like, it doesn't matter, they might not have helped me in terms of giving me money, but they would have helped me work it out. We would sit down as a family and done it, but I just never went. I kept everything bottled up. And that's something I don't do now. I've learned to communicate better, to share, and figure things out, with people that I love, and also the lives that I'm going to affect through my decisions as well. I mean, a lot of my adventure stuff does affect my girlfriend's life. It affects my mum's life. So I sit down and I communicate with them. We discuss the options of, about going ahead. But I never used to do that before. And it's, a good life skill that I think you need to learn. Great communication, really.
Well, I think just being, and it can be harder for us men to do it, but just being vulnerable as well. I mean, it sounds like you're in a similar place to me. I mean, if you'd said 5, 7, 8, 10 years ago, you're going to be sat across the table to, to guests and to a worldwide audience sharing insights about your life, things you've done right or wrong, I would have said, you're crazy. I'm never going to do that. But I'm a lot more open in my life now and fearing the judgment less of people and sort of needing the validation less. I think that is a key part of who we are. It is sometimes hard to go and ask for help, isn't it? Because it can be a sign of weakness. I need help or I'm in a bad situation, but life is adversity, is it not? I mean, there's going to be troubles in life. It is not easy, especially when you're an Osmo. I can tell you that for free, David. Yeah.
I think when someone said to you once, asking for help is the scariest thing you can ever do, but also the bravest thing you can ever do. It's such a simple act, and it can really change your life and positive. But it's just a scary thing to ask for help sometimes. And you said, I think a lot of men do struggle to do that. I know I certainly have.
Yeah. No, so here was the fascinating thing about when me and you were talking during the pre-interview for this. For all this journey of sort of self-discovery, there's been a lot of pivots in there. I mean, even from going to boarding school to, how you ended up in prison, how you've now pivoted to, working with sort of rehabilitation, the criminal justice system. But it struck me that throughout all this, there's a strong entrepreneurial spirit in here, but you've been running companies as well. I mean, there's I'm sure you're going to go on and do create another company. There's definitely more in you, but I think one of your companies was around management of people, right? Remind me what that
recruitment. Yeah,
recruitment. That's the word I was struggling for.
Yeah,
it's too early over here in the US.
The first one I started was an online radio station. So I studied music and radio at university, worked for the local radio stations. And I remember going to Jersey in the Channel Islands over here where my brother lives. And I saw an opportunity. I thought, they haven't got a radio station that's targeted to the audience. So I ended up starting this online radio station, launched it at a festival over there. And I think it was about 7 years later, I had 180,000 unique users. I was wasn't making loads of money. I was making money from it. And there was a company with a similar name who they sort of stole the name. So I was going to go and sue them. They turned around, sort of counter offered and said, can we just buy your database, your business out? And it was more money that I was going to go for them. And I was getting quite tired of running the station. It was a lot of hard work. So I was like, all right, you can take it on, take it off my hands. That's fine. So yeah, I made some money doing that. And then that's when sort of London life came in. But I also started my recruitment agency as well. So I did a bit of work in the recruiting industry. And I noticed, being somebody that loves the action sports industry, the extreme sports and all that, I noticed there was a gap in the market. Nobody's recruiting directly for the extreme sports companies. So nobody's directing for your Quicksilvers, your Rip Curls, Surf Domes, Fat Face, all of that over here. But it's not recruiting surfers. It's recruiting like, I don't know, a social media expert or a business analyst for these companies, but who loves the extreme sports industry. And I remember I got a job with Surf Dome. I think I got the job on the Thursday, contract. On the Monday, I had 2 people placed. And they're like, that's it. We're only going to use you from now on. So we use all these recruitment agencies, and they're great. They know recruitment, but they don't know our industry like you know our industry. And then from there, I ended up getting a few more contracts from different companies. And yeah, I was doing really well, actually. Really proud of myself, that one.
Yeah, and it's interesting because one of the things that you said I picked up on there was you said you saw an opportunity. And I think I sort of joked with you about this, but tied into the burglaries is mostly a bad joke to have. But it is, you do seem to be able to place yourself in windows of opportunity. And I think an opportunity seems to be part of your journey as well, which is really an entrepreneurial characteristic, isn't it? Is seeing an opportunity in the market.
I think the executive summary of my CV, if I remember off the top of my head, is that I'm good at spotting opportunities and then sort of doing something with that opportunity, making sure that comes to light and it does go somewhere. And I think it's the same with the paddleboarding. I've seen an opportunity for the sport to grow, for me to be out there pushing it, an opportunity to get these world records. And yeah, I think I am good. It's just trying to keep that in a positive way now, keep looking for positive opportunities, which I'm doing.
Yeah, and would you say that the reason why I sort of touched on the pivots is there's always been different focuses in what you've done as well. Are you a person that needs to remain focused? You're doing a bit of a dry smile there. Maybe that's resonated. But do you need to stay focused on like one task to be successful?
No, I mean, I like to have focus in my life and drive. And I think it's just, if I can see an opportunity, then I will jump on that opportunity and sort of focus on that. I mean, what's great with the work I do, that's my solid ground there. That's my income, pays my bills. So I can get out there and look for different opportunities. And take them there. But I always do need something to focus on. I can't just sort of sit down and not knowing what's coming up in the next few weeks. I need to have something coming up. So I suppose something that excites me as well, I think, as well.
Yeah, because I know you mentioned about sort of adventure as well and the need for adventure. And I think we all in our lives, I mean, I've got 2 young sons, sort of 8 and 10, and they're very good about reminding me of, to be a kid again. Because as adults, we can get too serious, and it's sometimes hard just to sort of, to mess around and have that source of adventure, which we lose in everyday lives. And it seems that you've picked up on that. You've reflected on that. That's a strong part of who you are. I get the feeling, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you lose that adventure, is that where you maybe tail off and some of these bad things have happened in your life and in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, when I was sitting in my second prison sentence, I was thinking, something that's disappeared from my life. And I was thinking adventure was one of those things, I did my Gold Duke of Edinburgh over here, which is an award, an outward bound award. You go off to the woods, you do all these treks and everything. You learn bushcraft. And I've always loved the outdoors, and it's just I should have never let go of that. And I think if I didn't let go of that, things in my life would have gone a lot different. I don't think I would have moved to London for a start. I mean, I love the beach. I'm a bit of a beach bum, really, and I should have never left the seaside. And I just want to hold on to the adventure, keep going, and hopefully I can sort of inspire others to get outside as well. I mean, I was speaking to a mother of 2 the other day. And she was like, I've got 2 children. I can't just get out and do these. But I was like, an adventure is anything. Even if it's to go camping with your 2 kids the weekend, you don't usually do that. That's an adventure. Maybe learn to make a fire together, all 3 of you having an adventure together. You're growing as individuals and as a family. And an adventure is anything. It's just taking that step out of your comfort zone and just use it as an opportunity to learn.
Yeah, and how do you take what you've learned then and sort of get other people to where you are? So, I mean, you seem very settled in your mindset. You have a very positive outlook. You've got some great ways to sort of overcome the mindset of adversity. But how do you then share that with others? What's the best way that you've found to do that?
I think the first thing is you've got to notice that you need change in your life. I mean, I think that's this. You can't really help yourself until you're willing to have help. So I think you've got to realize that you are stuck in a rut. You need something to change. You need to, you might be stuck in a 9-to-5 job. You come home, you're tired. I think it's just being able to recognize that you're just stuck in this routine. You need change. And then once you can do that, it's then looking for that change, looking to get outside. I mean, I always, adventure for me is always about getting outside, disconnecting with everything around you, and then reconnecting with yourself on the different side of the glass, I suppose. But again, it's just spotting that that opportunity to change and that wants to change as well and needs to change as well.
Yeah, it's about the other question. Often people talk about like goals, and then they put there's 2 types of people. There's those that see the end goal, and there's those that see the. Let me go back and do. I'm butchering this. I'm going to start again. There's those that see the end goal, and there's those that see the obstacles that stand in their way. And I guess it's those that see the end goal are easy, but those that see the obstacles that stand in their way, I guess those are the people that you'd have to sort of nurture and help and support through it. But from what your experience have found, that they have to come to that realization themselves. I guess that's why some people go back in the criminal justice system because they don't have that sort of self-belief or they don't want it bad enough to change.
That's it. And I think, that is exactly it. And I think we all have dreams. And, the only person that's ever going to stop you living those dreams is yourself. And you should never let anybody, any other outside factor, stop you from living those dreams. I remember when I decided to do my 4 lakes, I came up with that idea whilst I was in prison. And everybody said to me, you won't do that. You're daydreaming again. Once a number, always a number is one thing. And, I went and did it. And when I did them, I'd been out for a year and 2 months. And I remember sitting on the edge of Battle Lake. I was like, I've done it. Just over a year and a bit ago, I was sitting in a prison cell, surrounded by so much failure and negativity. And here I am today. I have 4 world records. I'm trying to make some positive change in this world. And I was like, I am changing. And I think everybody has the ability to do it. And I think everybody should try and grow a little bit every day as an individual.
And you mentioned earlier about failure, that part of your trouble started when you realized that perhaps you'd not had failure in your life and you didn't know how to deal with it. So then when you lost your job, your world started to sort of crumble around you. What is the biggest thing that you sort of learned there, David, that you would share with others around your experience of failure?
I think first off, failure is a learning tool. It's an opportunity to understand what went wrong, figure things and change them. But if you feel like you're slipping down the slope, always ask for help. But for me, I don't think there's ever going to be a greater failure than prison in my life. I just can't think of anything bigger.
Let's touch some wood.
But why can't that biggest failure in my life be my biggest success in life? I've sat there, I've been given all this time to learn more about myself. So why can't I take that opportunity, flip it around and make it become my biggest success? And I like to think that that's something I'm doing now. And that's exactly what failure is. It's just a tool to learn. And that's how you've got to remember it. At the time, it might feel rubbish. You might be sitting there down in the dumps, your partner's left you. But again, it's just that opportunity. You've just got to see a shimmer of light, I suppose, and take it on board and take it as an opportunity to learn and figure out how not to get into this situation ever again.
Yeah, and it could have been Lewis Conway. I get confused on my name sometimes. I know one of my guests, I think it was Lewis, said, I think it was Les Brown, who is a famous motivational speaker over here, said, you find, who do you listen to? You find people that have what you want and have been where you are. And he sort of related that to a story, David, that someone had come out of prison and he kept applying for all these jobs and had submitted like thousands of applications. And his family was saying, no, that's okay, honey. Someone, you'll get a lucky break. Someone will sort of give you a job. That's okay. And he felt all this failure until he met someone that had come out of prison but had what he wanted. And this guy said, you're looking at this all wrong. You've got to knock that door. You've got to talk to a manager and you've got to plead for a second chance. And you've got to talk to someone, because by submitting all his applications, it's not going to sort of go anywhere. And it is that moment that he describes when, your failure becomes your greatest strength, because someone can share that story, that journey with you. And it inspired him to then change. And then his journey then started. So it is incredible, those small nuggets of wisdom that you share, David, and the work that you do is inspiring other people. So I'm grateful that you're sharing. So as we start to wrap up our time together, maybe tell us what's next. So you've got 4 world records. You clearly want more. What are you working on?
So next week I'm doing the River Thames, 208 kilometres of continuous paddling. The world record's 2 days, 14 hours, 8 minutes. I plan on doing it between 36 hours and 40 hours. And then October, I'm off to Ireland to do their longest lake. November, I'm in Iceland. And I'm working on a big campaign for May next year, which hopefully see me paddleboard 33 lakes in 33 countries across Europe in 66 days.
Wow.
Start in France, go along the south, up to Scandinavia all the way, and finish up in Holland.
Well, we didn't touch on madness, but maybe that can be in another podcast. That sounds crazy to me, but I mean, that's great and exciting stuff. And so what are you going to do? So the money that raised, so when this episode comes out, I'll gladly put all your links in the show notes for people to look at. So what is the money that you're going to raise going to go towards?
Yeah, so for the things I'm doing this year, I'm raising money for a charity called the Alliance of Sport, who I've actually become an ambassador for. So they use the power of sport in the criminal justice system to help tackle reform and rehabilitation. I mean, I've witnessed firsthand the power of adventure, the power of sport as a tool for transformation. And inside, you can do so much with that. And what these guys are doing is absolutely amazing. And they just need more support, more awareness as well. And that's what I'm trying to do, try and get out and push it. And then when I do my stuff next year, I'm going to take another 2 charities called the Irish Benevolent Fund, who took care of me growing up where my father passed away, and then a company called Adventure Therapy, who help people with mental health through adventure.
Wow, I mean, incredible work. And I don't think you'd be doing any of this stuff if your life hadn't taken that path. So as bad as it sounds sometimes, those paths that we go on are predetermined to take us on that correct path of the help and support you're going to give many other people. So David, it's been an honor and a privilege to talk to you. So before we end, where can people find you on social media?
Yeah, so Instagram, Twitter, Nomadic Paddler. If you want to go LinkedIn, David Haze. My website's nomadicpaddler.co.uk. And for the funding, you just go Just Giving, Paddling for Change as well. That's where you see that.
Sounds good. And I bet when you were in prison, David, reflecting, you never thought that you would appear on a podcast with a former UK police detective now living in America, did you? I'm sure that wasn't on your list. It wasn't on your bucket list.
No, well, not at all. I was telling my boss about it. We did have a good laugh, actually.
Yeah, it is funny. And there's a good friend of mine that actually put in prison for 5 years. I think I told you that story. I need to share that with my listeners at some point. So, but David, you're an incredible guy. I'm really proud of the things that you're achieving, and it's been great to talk to you. So I know we'll cross paths again and stay in contact. But for now, David, thank you for joining me on the Who I Became podcast.
Thank you for having me. Take care.
Thank you for joining the Who I Became podcast. To help spread this inspiring story, be sure to share it with your friends, hit the like button, and of course subscribe to our channel so you won't miss out on any future episodes. We'd also love to hear how this story impacted you, so leave a comment on whatever platform you're watching us from. To learn more about this episode, our guests, or Simon, head over to the Simon Osimo/podcast and sign up to receive the latest information delivered straight to your inbox. Once again, thank you for joining us for the Who I Became podcast.